thank you for joining us. It's such an honor to have you here. Where are you from? Where are you right now? Nima travels so much. He's from LA, but kind of like me, he's all over the place. So tell everyone where you're at right now.
So I am in the Netherlands right now. I just got in from Switzerland a few days ago, and I was in Italy a few weeks ago, and in Berlin a week before that. And I've been in Northern Ireland, and before that, I was traveling cross country in the United States on a motorcycle, filming a bit of a documentary going through. We got to about 9 different states before a full grown deer jumped right in front of my motorcycle and smashed right into me. And I almost died, but I didn't. So here I am.
You're here. You're here.
I am
Excellent.
here.
Yeah, and thank you to everyone that's here. As I said, we are recording because some people can't make this time and they will be able to access this. The great thing about being here live is that you can ask questions.
Only going to surprise you with certain things about me because yeah, there's a lot of stuff I don't think I've shared. I've shared on certain podcasts, but yeah, on at the root of it all, I am the same thing that all of you are. I'm a conscious observer of this reality that gets to interact with this awesome game that we're playing and connect with different beings and have these experiences, process the information I receive, and yeah, paint this beautiful picture of life, which is awesome. It's such a gift. I'm so grateful for it. And before that, I was so caught up in all these different stories and who I'm supposed to be, how I'm supposed to act. As a man, how am I supposed to act? As a person living in Los Angeles, what's the right way to look and what's success and what's failure? And yeah, all these different structures get built. And I was kind of just lost in that. And from the age of, I'd say, 11, 12, maybe 13, for the next 12 years, I was manically depressed. I just didn't, nothing made sense to me. I didn't understand why I'm supposed to care about all these things that I'm being told to care about. I was a kid and I just wanted to play and I just wanted to, connect with everyone, boy, girl, none of that mattered to me. It was just, let's have fun and let's experience this thing. And then puberty hits and now you're supposed to act a different way and impress people in this kind of way. Then you get into middle school and high school, and now life is really serious. And if you don't shape up and get it together, you're going to end up in the street dead broke. And all these different structures got added on top, and I just felt lost in the entire thing. And I was expressing myself in the way that I thought people wanted to see me. And what that did was it attracted people that liked the way I was pretending to be. And it pushed away people who probably would have really liked my authentic expression, but I never had that chance. So I was surrounded. I had friends. I wasn't alone, but I felt lonely all the time and didn't feel like anybody really knew me or understood me. And I didn't understand it at that point, but that was my own doing. That was the expression I was putting out was attracting people that liked that expression and repelling those that didn't. Um, yeah, I went through life and was really confused. That there's some stuff that if we were to go into, it would be hours. So I'm gonna brush through this. If you guys have questions about it later, feel free to ask. But I went into a very rebellious phase of my life, pushing my boundaries, and ended up getting into trouble. I was in jail facing a life sentence plus 70 something years on top of it. And yeah, I had to leave the country because there was someone else involved in the case that was certainly going to spend the rest of their life behind bars. And yeah, I ended up booking a one-way ticket out of the United States with no intentions of ever coming back. And I held my dog, who was my best friend in the whole world, and cried on his head for half an hour and promised him that I would be back for him. And he actually ended up dying before I got out of jail, so I never saw him again. And that was our last moment together. Um, so yeah, I was bouncing around different places, hoping to God that nobody would scan my passport, because if they did, I was going to be extradited back to the United States. And yeah, after about a year, the other person involved with the case was supposed to cut a deal with the judge and be able to be freed, and they hadn't been yet. And I spoke with my dad, who was helping out, and we couldn't once he looked into it more, they ended up saying, yeah, that guy's not a US citizen, and we're going to withhold him in an immigration prison for up to 15 years until Nima comes back and this is dealt with. So I had to come back. There was no other choice. I couldn't let that person be in there. So I ended up getting an attorney by the name of Robert Shapiro, who was OJ Simpson's lawyer for his case. And he told me, come back now and let's take care of this. And so I flew back and was arrested by Homeland Security once I arrived back in Los Angeles. Went to jail, dealt with this whole thing. That's a whole other story, and I have a 3 hour podcast where I go into detail about that. But once I got out of jail, I was 18 when I was arrested. The police came and knocked down the door and cuffed me at 4 in the morning. And I didn't finish with probation until I was 25. So there was this kid inside me that had already been broken at some point and stopped expressing himself in the way that he loved to, And then from the moment that my adult life started, I spent the next 7 years just fully pulled into the legal system and going to probation officers who wouldn't shake my hand, and people that would just look at me like I was less than them. And it was for somebody who was already really not happy with life, it was just knocking me down to a point where I just didn't care anymore. Um, then, as that part of my life was coming to an end, my best friend, who is my little cousin, and his name is also Nima, ended up dying in a motorcycle accident. And I found out about it just as it had happened and showed up and saw his body on the floor. And I was done. I was just done. I didn't care anymore. And he was such a beautiful spirit, and I was this depressed fucking guy. And you just go, why him when all I'm resonating around me is just suffering, and anyone who's around me is a little bit worse for connecting with me when this beautiful spirit is gone now. And yeah, I went into the deepest darkness of my life. There would be momentary lapses of joy, and my default state was just suffering and confusion. I got to a point where I was completely just done with life, and my godson's father he sent me a link to a documentary about this guy named Wim Hof. And I watched it, and it was these people climbing this mountain in a snowstorm in their shorts and getting into ice water. And I was watching it with a group of people, and as soon as it was over, I pulled out my phone and signed up to go train with him. It was a 1 week excursion in Poland in December. And the people around me just said, wow, you're so awesome. You just go for it. And you're just, yeah, if you want to do something, you do it. What they didn't know was that, well, they did know that I hate the cold, and I always hated the cold. And by cold, I'm talking in Fahrenheit like 70 degrees, and in Celsius 20 degrees for me was freezing. And I would be wearing a winter coat at that time. I have a winter coat wrapped around my waist right now in case I want to put it on. And when I when I saw that documentary, I said, okay, that's the way I'm going to die. I'm a piece of shit and I hate this. And this is the worst way I can go. And that's where I'm going to go and suffer and end this miserable existence of mine. And that's where I went. And a part of me did die over there. A part of me that I didn't need in my life anymore. Through controlled stress, through breath work, I disconnected from that voice in my head. I had a moment in my life where all of my senses were turned off and the voice in my head was turned off and my consciousness was all that was left. And I realized that I'm always connected to this space, but that my senses and my voice keep me connected to this space as well. Um, One of the other things that was so incredible about it was how familiar the space felt. And yeah, at that moment, I just knew that I was done living the way that people were going to tell me to live. And I didn't know how I was going to live yet, but I knew that if I was going to fail in this life, I was going to fail on my own terms. And I needed to understand what all these layers of the onion were that got added on top of my mind to create this entire game of life that I was playing. And that's what I dedicated my life to. I dedicated it to connecting with as many beautiful people as yourselves as I can. And I met you, Oz, and I just started seeing the value and connection with amazing people. And even I was thinking about it, like you're doing this thing right now, and people are donating to try to keep the wellness of Oz open. And I just thought, fuck, man, if she doesn't get a penny, that doesn't change the fact that the beauty of what you give just comes out of you. And everybody has that. Everybody has these beautiful things that they put out, and it's so incredible. And it just made me love people so much. Just everybody, people that I haven't even met yet. I was just at some point I had this transition where I would look at people and I would just see a kid and I felt like a kid and it went back it after and this took work. This isn't just like a something blinked and like a snap of a finger and all the layers are gone. There was a lot of work and there was a lot of getting out of my comfort zone and there was a lot of listening to that voice in my head and seeing what it was trying to tell me. And that was one of the really powerful things that I got out of the cold immersion, getting into the ice water, was this voice in my head that would say, you can't do this. You're going to die. You're going to freeze to death. This is terrible. Don't do it. And I would do it anyway. And that made me realize how long I've been reflexively listening to that voice in my head and doing whatever it said. And that's when I kind of started questioning, like, what is that thing? And I found this gift of being able to put myself in stressful situations and then observing what that thing said. And it was telling me all my deep rooted insecurities and fears and doubts that I had within myself. And I would just get to sit back and hear it and then do whatever I wanted. That wasn't me. That wasn't dictating what I do and who I am. There was something listening to that voice that got to determine if I'm going to do that or I'm not, or I'm going to listen to that voice or I'm not going to listen to it. And yeah, there were times that that voice was trying to keep me safe and protect me and was going off of previous experiences and creating projections and trying to make things easier. But there were so many times where I just had these deep rooted programs in me telling me this is how you are, this is what you have to be, this is what's going to happen if you try to have this conversation with this person, or if you really put yourself out there and just let yourself be that weird guy that you are. People aren't going to like you and this and that. And I just said, fuck that, fuck all of that. I'm just going to be me. I'm just going to allow my authentic expression to come out. And I got surrounded by the most amazing people. All these countries that I told you guys I've gone to right now, just in the last couple months, I never stay at a hotel. I I meet people and they become brothers and sisters like you, Oz. It's just family that I didn't know existed, and now they do, and I fucking love them. And I go spend time with them and connect with them, and they give me their essence and I give mine back to them. And that's beautiful. I don't need anything. I don't need anything, but I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted you to, that's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing a piece of your heart with us. It's not always easy, like you said, for people to really open up and share their true, authentic self. They feel like they're going to get judged. They don't feel comfortable. I notice, especially with men, like men feel like they can't show their sensitive side. It's just so sad to me that people try to suppress who they really are. And you're right. I mean, when you show your authentic self, um, you just think, why didn't I do this sooner, right? Why didn't I allow my true self to come out sooner? Because who cares? Like if these people are loving me for who I'm really not, then I don't really need them in my life anyway. I want people to love me for who I really am. And that's basically what you're saying. Like I see it all the time because I travel a lot too. And I see so many people putting on this act. And I have really strong, like I can feel people. I look into their eyes, I feel their energy, and I can see straight. I don't know how, since I was a little girl, I can just read someone's soul. I look into their eyes and I have pretty good bullshit radar, right? you right, and it saddens me, and because who we really are, that is more fascinating to me. That's more interesting to me to see who each person really is. What do you have to offer to this world? Share that with me. Like, let that shine through, let that come out. And I wish that more and more people would allow themselves to do that instead of feeling so like, oh, I'm going to be judged. People are going to have this opinion about me. They're not going to like me. They're going to think I'm strange or weird. No, let your weirdness shine, right? Let that come out and attract the tribe you are meant to attract. And watch how once you start doing that, magic happens. Magic really does happen. You start attracting into your life the right tribe, the right people. They just show up, just like you're saying. I'm the same. I can travel around the world and I can stay in a hotel, but I never need to. I have family all over the world too. They just appear when you are your true, authentic self. Now, one thing I want to ask, because I don't know, Naomi got a tiny taste of who Wim Hof was, because when I was in England last, Naomi gets all these companies contacting her, offering her free stuff so she could write about them, right? And she said to me, you want to come and be in a cold room? It's called reset. It's called cryotherapy, right? And I was like, yeah, cool. I hate the cold too. So let me go try like what I learned from that Wim Hof training with Nima, right? Let me go try it. And I went into this room and the owners were so amazed. They were watching me and filming me. They were so amazed. And when I came out, they were like, we'd never seen anyone use your approach before. Everyone normally jumps around in there to keep their body warm. And I was just standing still. And then I was doing some pranayama, some breath work. And when the time was up, I didn't even realize that the time was up. And it was all from that training that you brought to my studio, right? So it, and she'd never seen anyone use that approach before. But what I'm saying is like tell us a little bit about, in case I don't know if Rita knows who Wim Hof is, but I didn't fully go into it with Naomi either. Just tell us a little bit about that, right? So people know.
Yeah.
This is an amazing practice that I think everyone should at least watch a Wim Hof documentary, or at least see what it is that you went and did. Because it's not, when you think I'm going to jump into something freezing, the first thought is, are these people nuts? Do you know what I mean? That was my thought, my initial thought, right? And then I went and watched a documentary. I learned from you, and it was pretty interesting. So yeah, if you could touch on that just a little bit, it'd be great.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, Wim actually just released a book called The Wim Hof Method, which I've read the first 8 chapters so far. And yeah, for somebody who doesn't know anything about about him. It's great because it goes into the method, it goes into his life, and it also goes very much into the science behind what's happening. Anything that's claimed is, yeah, in the back of the book, they have the exact scientific study that they did with Wim. And so the three pillars of the Wim Hof method are breathing, cold immersion, and mindset. And yeah, this guy held 26 or holds 26 world records for cold immersion, swimming under ice, holding his breath under ice. He was covered in ice up to his neck for almost 2 hours without allowing his core body temperature to drop. And so he was doing all these things, and it was gaining attention. And he was just saying, people just assumed, yeah, this guy, he's superhuman and he can do it, and that's what it is. And he was just saying, no, anybody can do this, and I can train people. So I think if I'm not mistaken, the first real turning point with it all was an endotoxin study that was done. They put dead E. coli, they injected Wim with it, and they had injected it into another 100, over 100 people, and all those people were vomiting, fever. They're getting that response that's supposed to come, which is natural. And Wim was able to suppress all of it and just reject the endotoxin. And they just said, what? Like, this guy's crazy. How did he do this? And he said, I can teach people this. So he said, just give me, I think he said 10 days with these people. And they said, no, we'll give you four. So they gave him 4 days, and he trained, can't remember if it was 9 or 12 people, and they injected them with it. And all of them were able to suppress their immune response to it. And they just said, wait a second, this is your autonomic nervous system here. If it's autonomic, that means you have no control over it. How are these people controlling this thing that we did not think was possible? And Wim really dedicated his life to finding the science behind this stuff. So he was willing to do whatever research was possible. And he still is. That guy still is. And it's awesome that I'm speaking about him here because he lives like an hour and a half away from where I am right now. And I'm at Casper's house right now, by the way. So that's awesome too. And yeah, like
Say hi to Casper for me. Say hi to him for
I
me.
will do.
Yeah.
He went on a 30K hike today. He should be getting back shortly. I'll definitely let him know you said hi. But yeah, so Wim really dedicated himself to this, and it's just had amazing results, from the increase in your circulation. There's people who've had varicose veins on their calves, and just doing the Wim Hof method for the other benefits, they were, all of a sudden these varicose veins were gone, and they were finding that there's this thin microprotein that's around all your veins, capillaries, and arteries, and it's like a muscle that's actually pushing the blood through your system. And yeah, your heart's pumping it, but these muscles are also pumping it. So just like if you go to the gym and you're tensing and releasing your muscle when you're curling your bicep or whatever you're doing at that point, when you're getting into cold water, those muscles around your veins, capillaries, and arteries are tensing. So it's actually stressing them, creating hermetic stress, and actually building the strength in them. And these people, not only was their circulation as good as it used to be, but it was stronger because these varicose veins were just red blood cells that had trapped in the vein and created like a dam. And now their circulatory system was so strong that it was just breaking through all of that. And there's so many things from increased mitochondrial function and increased ATP production. There's so many scientific parts to it that were so valuable that they found. For me personally, the biggest gift I found from it was how it would trigger that voice in my head. And I was able to observe it. It was separating me from that, and I became an observer of that voice. And the thing is, when when we did the when we had the experience, we climbed the tallest mountain in the Czech Republic in minus 12 degrees Celsius with just shorts on, a snowstorm just blowing to the side of us, and um, yeah, when it was all done, the day that I was leaving, Wim ended up coming up to me and pulled me aside from everyone and pointed at the mountain and said, "You got to the top of that mountain?" I said, "Yeah, I did." And he said, "You went up one way." And I said, "Yeah, I went up one way." And he said, "Well, there's infinite ways to get to the top of the mountain. Just remember that." And I just knew what he was talking about. I knew what he was saying. And I love that about that guy because I was so blown away by that connection to everything during that breath work that he could have told me, "Give me everything you got and I'll give you the answers to the universe." And I would have done it. But he was just telling me, "Hey, man, there's a lot of ways to get into that space and don't just stop and think that it's this one way and this is the answer and this is all there is." And at the same time, when it comes to noticing that voice in your head, the cold bothered me, but some people the cold it won't bother them, so it won't trigger that voice in their head. Maybe for them it's public speaking, maybe for them it's having that conversation that they've been dreading having with somebody. But cherish those moments that trigger that voice and learn to listen to it because it's telling you. You don't have to obey it, but listen to it because it's there telling you all this deep rooted stuff that's finessed itself into your subconscious and you just don't even know is there. And now it's presented right in front of you. You can decide if you want to work on that or not.
Yes. So unlocking the power of your mind. So the average person is going to be like, well, how do I know that that voice is speaking to me? Do you have any tips on those people? Right? Because you said, I found that in my life too. It's in the darkest moments that we grow and somehow come out and see the light. And people normally go one or the other way. They either sink deeper or they just really rise from it, right?
Mhm.
But it's always from those darkest moments that we get the biggest awakening. But what are some tips? Because I've said this to some of my students: just listen to your inner voice, and in yoga we may use the chakras to explain it, like the third eye. Connect with your intuition, with your sixth sense. All the answers are within you. We have different ways, different healers and light workers have different ways of explaining it to people. But there are still so many people out there in the world. They don't have a connection with their physical body. They don't know that that voice is talking to them. Any pointers, or how would you tell people to connect with that? Is that even like a question that you would want to answer? Because I've seen that as a yoga teacher and as a healer that people ask me all the time. Like I even do it with medicine. My body knows when it's run down and it kind of tells me, and I tell people all the time. Like my body tells me what it needs. And what do you mean your body tells you what it means? Like people have this big disconnect with themselves. And from what I've heard about your life story, it seems like you had something similar, but in your case, you knew there was something else. And it took meeting these amazing people for you to truly discover like what that something else was. And then that power grew within you. Like what pointers would you give the average person that maybe isn't connected to that yet?
Now, here's the thing that I need to clarify when it comes to where I was at and knowing something in myself that there was something more. I didn't at all. I was so pulled into the facade of all this shit that I wasn't even looking for pieces to a puzzle or anything. I went there to die. That's what I went there for. I didn't go like, "Oh, this guru and he's going to save me and I'm going to find something." I wasn't looking for anything. I was just done. And that is where the biggest growth I've found has come from is in complete surrender. And in that moment when I was doing that breathing, there was a point where I thought like, "Oh, I'm dying right now." And I just said, "Okay, I'm dying. I'm not going to fight it." And I realized afterwards that the I that was saying it was dying was my ego. It was that voice in my head that is so worried about maintaining control of this entire house of cards that's been built to tell you this is what life is and this is how you have to be. And you know, I spent my whole life, my whole childhood trying to be a good boy. You know, I just wanted my mom and dad to be happy and do whatever satisfied them. And I didn't realize it at that point, but I still wasn't living for myself. I was living to get that positive affirmation from my family. And there was no part of me that was looking to find that voice. There was no part of me that said, there's something greater here. I was in such a depressed state that I just said, hey, like if I'm going to be a loser, let me be a loser on my own terms at least, you know? And that was the mindset I went into it with. And I love that because there's no part of me that sits there and says, oh, this person, they just can't get there, you know, like I'm different and I have the ability to do this stuff because I'm special. That's bullshit, because most people I meet weren't at the state that I was in that moment, and we all have it in us. And that was one of the things. One day I was sitting there and I said, damn, almost everyone had their inner child broken, but then I knew that everyone still has that inner child within them that's waiting to be woken back up again. And when that woke up for me, it changed a lot of things. And to answer your question, when it comes to recognizing that voice, for me, the easiest way to do it is to put myself in an uncomfortable situation. And when I do that, if I'm deciding that I want to put myself in this difficult situation, then I've already made that choice. That's what I want to do. Now, that thing that's doing everything to talk me out of it, that's the thing that I look at and go, okay, what do you have to say? Like, I almost drowned in the ocean once. And so maybe a couple of years ago, I was in Croatia and it was midnight and I just went into the sea in just black water and freaked out. I freaked out. My mind was thinking of a shark coming from underneath to eat me, or a wave pulling me down, or my leg getting caught on seaweed, and all this stuff. And the way that that voice for me has worked is, first, it'll say, get out. No, don't do this. Don't, you're crazy. You're going to die. Get out. And then after a while, it'll say, okay, good job. You did it. Now get out. And you go, oh, look, you changed your approach to still try to get me to get out. And I won't leave until there's silence. I won't leave until I'm immersed in that environment and I become part of it. And once I've done that, then that's good for me. And that might not be good for someone else. Maybe someone else wants to stay longer or do whatever. But for me, it's, you need to be quiet and you need to realize that you're a crucial part of my human experience here, but stop trying to tell me what to do. That's it. Like, you can make your suggestions and then I'm going to make the decision. And I don't know where I heard it before, but they say like the ego is a great passenger in the car, but it's a shitty driver, you know? So you drive and let that thing enjoy the ride. And so many people's egos are afraid, myself included, until I just didn't care anymore. But we want to maintain that control that we believe we have. We want to feel like we know what's happening and we got it all figured out. And anything foreign to that begins to make that thing go haywire. And that's why I think right now is such a beautiful moment for humanity, because the whole world is uncertain. The whole world's been nudged out of their comfort zone. And you're going to find people who try to hang on to what little things they can, their Netflix and their order food online and have it delivered to the house and all this stuff, to say like it's normal and like we're still in that normal space. But it's not. It's not. And it's a very unique and awesome experience and moment for people to come out the other end, because I can sit down with you or with Rita or Naomi and say, hey, what do you think is going to happen in 6 months? And I'm pretty sure all of us are going to say, shit, I have no idea. Let's just, you know, before we were just, oh yeah, 6 months from now I'm going to do this and this and that. And it's gone. Everything's, we're in a very uncertain time, which for me is awesome because I lived this long life of trying to maintain this illusion of certainty. And the funny thing is that I was so certain, but I was wrong about basically everything I was certain about. It ended up going a completely different way anyway. So, yeah, I hope that answered that question. Put yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for you saying that, like, for you it's an awesome time, you know what? For me too. I like not knowing. It's exciting for me because I always have this inner child anyway. That's just how I am. And I actually get anxiety when I plan too far ahead. I love being in the moment, right? And I love just the excitement of new things that are going to happen. And a lot of my students are filled with fear right now. And that saddens me. That fear that's building up in people around the world. And I just wish that there was somehow that we could turn that fear into excitement. You know what? Fresh start, new beginnings. You can now change your life and make it the very like your dream life, the perfect life, because it's as if life has given us a pause and a stop, given us that chance. When else have we ever had a chance to do that? To completely come to a complete standstill and change everything in our lives. I mean, whenever have we had that opportunity? So that is very exciting to me, but I do see how a lot of people are terrified right now. Another thing that always worked for me, but again, we each have our own way of dealing with stuff. I don't like fear. So for me, if something scares me, I have to overcome it. I don't like being scared of anything. It pisses me off, actually, right? And I'm so glad that I'm like that. Because if something like bullies, someone trying to scare me, something trying to scare me, it actually gives me strength. It gives me power. And it says there's no way I'm allowing this to take over me. And I will overcome it. And that actually puts fire up my butt to give me the ability to, think of something new and overcome it. So I guess each person has their own way of dealing with it. One thing I wanted to bring up that was really fascinating for me when I did when you guys were at the studio and we did the bath, the ice bath. What I found really cool was just before we went into the ice bath, because I hate the cold too. I'm always cold. And I was like, I was a bit of a skeptic. I was like, if I can do this, anyone can do this, because I hate being cold. But I just remember being told, your body's going to go into shock and your brain is going to tell your organs to shut down. And that's why people die most of the time, right? Because your own mind is doing it, which is like basically what this is about today, the power of our minds. So I've never forgotten that. Your brain is what's making you die. You're going to get in the cold, your brain is going to feel the freezing cold, and your brain is going to tell your organs to shut down, and that's why you die. Not really because of the cold. The cold comes later, but it's your own, it's your power that's doing it. And so once that kicks in and your mind is telling you that it's cold and everything's going to shut down, that's when you need to start saying no. That's when you need to change your force. That's when you need to be in control of it. No, it's not cold. No, I'm not going to die. No, my organs aren't shutting down. I'm a badass. This is not happening, and I'm going to use this breath. I'm going to be calm. And again, in yoga, I find a lot of similarities with it, with yoga teachings, pranayama, just with the breath work to just bring some kind of peace and calm to you. When you're calm, instead of freaking out, you think more clearly, right? And that's actually, right, that's one amazing tool and way to control the mind. Just focusing on the breath and calming the whole mind down. And then all of a sudden, everything is just so much more clearer. Because most of the time when people freak out or have this fear, they're hyperventilating and they're breathing hard. They're having panic attacks and anxiety. And that's when you can't think clearly. That's when you do make the mistakes. So I never forget that from that training. And it really is similar to yoga training as well. So yeah. Yeah. Sorry
There's
to go.
I love it when you're not there for everybody. That's what this is about. That's why I didn't want any questions from you. I said let's just have a conversation. I know it's gonna come out, and this is what it's about. One of the things that you're touching on, fear, is just the biggest motivator that people have, And there's a very interesting. So I don't know anything about chakras or anything like that when I had that experience in Poland, and when I had another experience like that a year later. And it was kind of like that information started presenting itself to me. I thought all this spiritual stuff, for me, I was so analytical and logical. And if I hadn't experienced it and I wasn't able to explain it, then it wasn't real. And it took me experiencing it to then, I don't know, consciously or unconsciously start seeking things to explain what had happened. But when I started looking into the meaning of the chakras, and just working your way all the way up, I saw it and said, okay, these are the things you clear. And once you've cleared those channels, enlightenment is in front of you, and you can see yourself outside of yourself and see the connection of everything. And then I started looking at it backwards, and I said, if you can detach yourself from every one of these, that's the key to liberation in this life. And the hardest one is that root chakra, the fear of death, the fear of mortality. And that's the thing that is driving what's happening in this world right now. Everyone is so afraid to die or so afraid to kill someone. And we're just sitting here saying, tell me what to do. Tell me how to be. What do I do? And I feel like people have not really sat down. A lot of people haven't sat down and said, I'm going to die. My mom's going to die. My neighbors, everyone that's here is going to go at some point. And we need to look at how we live while we're here and stop focusing on prolonging this experience and just enrich this experience now. And that for me, you know, since the start of April, I've been traveling from state to state, watching how all these different cultures are dealing with COVID-19. And LA thinks they got it figured out and everyone else is crazy. And then you get to Nevada and they think the people in LA are just nuts and this is how you deal with it. And then all of a sudden you get to Sedona and it's like a whole different world. And then you even go from there, go to New Mexico, and everyone's wearing a mask, but then their massage parlors are open and people are still getting their massages over there. And I'm just sitting here like, like look at all these different little bubbles, and they're sure they got it right. And then you get to Idaho and they're not doing anything, or you get to Provo in Utah and there's 1,000 people in the street by BYU. Every restaurant is packed. No one's wearing a mask. They're like, you would, if you didn't have the source of information to tell you something was happening, you wouldn't know anything was happening. And I'm just moving through these different worlds and looking at what their reality is and what's real to them and what they're reinforcing as reality for the people around them. And this is the kind of stuff I talk about in my book. And the first thing we talk about in that book is awareness. And then from there, we go into information and we say, hey, what is information? What I see is giving me information that my mind processes. What I hear, all my different senses, what they're taking in, that's all information. And the information that I receive and the interpretation that I make of that information creates my reality. If There's no way you and I can both agree if I didn't know what a popsicle is and I didn't know what peanut butter is, then I'm not going to be the one to invent peanut butter popsicles. It's not going to happen because it never entered my reality. And at the same time, there's a story in the book where I talk about a walk through the jungle and there's a tiger stalking you. And if you don't hear it, smell it, see it somehow, if there is no information that enters your reality that that tiger exists and it leaves, then that tiger never existed in your reality. Now, it did exist in the world, but in your life, it did not exist. So now we start looking at where does our information come from? And information comes from conversation. Information comes from me sitting down. I'm getting information from my phone, I'm getting information from my computer, from my TV, but then I'm getting a lot of information from my day-to-day interactions with people. And when you're having people stay home, when you're having people keep distance from one another and not interact with one another, you are heavily limiting the information that you receive from your fellow human. And now the overwhelming majority of information that's entering your reality is coming through a screen. And it's telling you what is and isn't real and what is and isn't life. And if you accept that as true, then it will be true to you until something else contradicts it and you accept that as true. So once I accept that thing is true, not only is my reality changed, but my expression has changed and I'm reinforcing that truth to the people around me. And now I'm giving them information that this is true. So this is a really important thing for me. It's a very important topic because most people haven't been traveling during this time. And I've been going to so many places and I'm seeing different realities, different worlds. Then you come and you get to Northern Ireland and the bars are open and people are out and about. And I'm just like, whoa, I haven't even seen this anywhere. There's just like full on restaurants and bars. And then from there, you get to Switzerland and you're not allowed into a store without a mask. And one day this place is like this, and the next day the TV tells them that, and everything completely changes. And that's a very fascinating thing for me. It's been a really interesting social experiment, to kind of sit back and watch how people react to this. And yeah, I just wanted to share that. It's been really fascinating for me.
Um, I totally agree with you. I've always traveled as well, and the biggest eye opener for me was when I went to Iraq the first time in 2005. Everyone thought I was completely mental. Um, uh, Everyone thought it was a death wish, right? So the war was going on. 2005 was pretty crazy in Iraq. The first time I went, there wasn't even an airport. I had to fly in for a little part of Turkey and then do a 9-hour drive with bodyguards and guns through a border. And what that was a big eye opener for me, because I'd just been seeing what was on the news and what American people and English people were being told about what was going on, and then I went right into it. And yes, there were some crazy stuff going on, but it was completely different than what the media was showing us. And that was a big eye opener for me as well. I've always, thank God, been the sort of person that I don't really believe something unless I see it with my own eyes and feel it with my own heart anyway. And I've been blessed enough to travel just like you and see things for myself instead of taking someone's word for it. But that was the big eye opener, because at the time, the whole world was talking about Iraq. And to actually be there in that time, and I left and then I went back 3 months later, and in 3 months, an airport had been built, a Marriott hotel had been built, a whole bunch of restaurants had been built, and it was as if I hadn't been there for 5 years, but this was 3 months. And in 3 months, they had all this stuff, and I was like, how did you guys do this in 3 months? Where did you get the funding for it? And for my own security and safety, I was actually given paperwork to say that the government out there was protecting me, right? So I was just asking all these questions. I was curious, and asking some of the politicians and stuff, and I was pretty shocked and disgusted to find out that American people and Iraqi people were being taught to hate on one another, but the governments were friends, and it was actually Americans' money that was Americans were helping build all this stuff in Iraq. So I mean, I could get in trouble saying this, but I was an artist at the time, and I still opened my mouth, and I was told, "Don't say nothing, you're gonna get in trouble." And I was like, I just can't keep my mouth closed. I have to express my truth. If someone's gonna come chop my head off for it, then so be it. My time is up, right? But I cannot hide the truth from people. But that was a huge eye opener for me. Like in the space of 3 months, where the people were being told through media to hate on one another, and this was going on and that was going on. None of this really existed, and the governments were friends helping one another. And that really hurt my feelings that like people were being tricked and lied to around the world. And that really made me then think, you know what, unless I see things with my own eyes, I can't just take someone's word for it. I can't just watch it on the news and just believe that it's true. And just like you said, traveling around, I've been traveling all year. And what I see, the difference between this island, Los Angeles, Nevada, I was in Nevada as well, the UK, it's so different. But this is a worldly issue. Like the whole world is talking about COVID, but every single area is dealing with it completely differently. So that's what's really interesting to me as well, which is what, you know, you said bathroom break. That's so funny. I'm cracking up. She wrote bathroom break. But hurry up and pee because it's almost question time. That's so funny.
That's
Yes.
the point you bring up is very fascinating for me, because of the traveling that I've done and what I've seen in Southeast Asia, in the Middle East, in Europe, in the States, all these different places, wherever I go, whether they're male, female, whatever race they are, whatever religion they are, whatever their political beliefs are, I just keep running into people that just want to feel loved, that want to love, that want to experience this life, that want to feel secure for them and their family. And when they have that, they feel good. And the thing is, when we sit there and say there's this hate amongst Americans being spread or hate amongst Iraqis being spread and it's not real, that's the thing is it becomes real. You look at the people who control the information that's pushed to the masses, and they're basically writing a script. And if the masses accept it as true, they become the characters in the play that these people write. But that is the power of our belief, is we can just say no, that's not it for me. It's that simple. You can just say no, and you can live and see for yourself and experience for yourself. Because I'm telling you, wherever I've gone, wherever I've gone, it's been the same thing. Beautiful people trying to live their lives. And there's some assholes out there too, and that's all good. That's all good. I don't want everybody to be the same. If everyone was exactly the same, why would there be more than one person, you know? Like if we were all going to think the same and act the same, then what's the point of all this? We're over here living our unique experience and interacting with others that are living their unique experience. And that's such a beautiful, awesome thing that we get to do. And if we're going to constantly sit there and think that that person from across the world or this person that believes in something different than me is my enemy and this, that, the other, you can. And I'm not even taking away from anybody. Nobody has to live any way that I think they should live. But think to yourself if that's how you want to live. Do you want to live open to the world, or do you want to live in this little ball where you're trying to keep yourself safe and protected all the time? Because I've done both in very extreme fashion, and I'll choose open all day, every day. I am very happy to if I gotta go, if that deer would have hit me at a different angle and I was gonna die in that moment, when I had that accident, one of my friends got kind of upset at me because as soon as I got back to LA, I have another motorcycle there, and I just jumped on my motorcycle. My leg wasn't even fully healed yet, and he just said, "What are you doing, man? Like, what if you died? I was so close." And then I told him, "If I died and you had to speak at my funeral, what would you say? Honestly." And he stopped and he said, "Honestly, I would say you were really living your life and doing what you wanted to do." And I said, "That's it, man. Like I don't know when I'm gonna die. I might have an aneurysm while we're having this conversation. I don't know. I'm not gonna sit there and live trying to prolong this thing as long as I can. And whatever people's belief in the afterlife is and how that goes, that's to them. But I feel confident in how this goes, and I I'm completely blessed to get to live this life, and I would not dare squander such a wonderful gift living in fear. I can't do it. I'm like you, Oz. If something scares me, then that's something I need to deal with. And I have a boundary like we all do. It scares me to jump off of 1,000-foot cliff, and I'm not gonna go do that right now. But there's that middle room, there's that middle room where there's so much growth to be had, and through communication with others, there's if if you believe something and I believe something else and I assume that you believe what I believe, then we're living in two different realities. There's a fracture there. But if I can communicate with you openly, I can understand your perspective and the reality that you're experiencing. And whether I agree with it or not, at least I can have a better understanding of you. And people need to communicate with one another. There's so many different groups out there that want to stand up and speak for their rights. And that's beautiful. Now let's communicate. Let's hear each other out and let's be heard out so we can hear both sides of the fence and understand where the other person is coming from. And you don't have to agree with it at the end of the day. You absolutely don't. But just know that people click on the sensational stuff. So I can find you the craziest Trump supporter. I can find you the craziest far left activist person and just sit there and be like, see, this is how they all are. No, most people are just living their lives, trying to have a good life out here. Most people are. And through my travels, I was doing something called Work Away, which is like, I was on the motorcycle and it's kind of like Airbnb, except you help people out with stuff they need help with, and then you get to stay there and they'll offer you food. And I stayed with someone who was very much a Trump supporter in a ranch, and that guy was one of the most intelligent people I ever met. I stayed with people that were very anti-Trump in other parts. These were all just people. Like, all this other stuff they add on top of things, it really is, man, I don't know. There was something really beautiful that the guy from the ranch said to me. He said, "There's two different realities. There's the reality of the stars and the wind blowing, and you're starving in the middle of the desert, and a wolf comes and eats you. And then there's the reality of the stock market and of political parties and of all this other shit that humans created. And people have really disconnected from that first reality and get really pulled into the other one. And not to say that the second reality isn't heavily affecting our lives, but the amount of attention that you give something dictates what information enters your reality in that moment. And my attention is with you right now, and you're what exists in my reality right now, nothing else. Now, there's constantly just try to keep an eye. This is an important thing for people, is try to keep an eye on what's trying to hijack your attention, and how much time have you put into that first reality. When's the last time you've gone for a walk and heard the birds chirp and just put the phone away for a second? you know Uh, None of this stuff, whoever has come and gone as a president or any of that, it'll have some effect on your life, but the overwhelming majority, if you stop and look at it, is again on people giving their attention to these people and absorbing it, stressing themselves out, and then putting it out in the environment around them. There's a chapter in my book, or a section in my book, talking about stem cells. And I draw a similarity to people. And if you look at a stem cell, the way that a stem cell is programmed is by the environmental culture that it's put with. So they'll put a stem cell into a petri dish, and they may put an environmental culture of bone tissue, and then that stem cell will turn into bone, or muscle, and it'll turn into muscle. Now, if you immerse yourself in an environment of people that are constantly stressing and telling you this is what you need to value and this is what's important in life, and if you don't do this, then you're a failure, it's the culture that you're immersed in that's going to heavily affect the information that's entering your reality. And I at least hope that from this conversation, people can realize that whatever information enters your reality, you have the power to accept it or not, believe it and allow it to affect your expression or not. And you get to navigate through this life. People are looking for self actualization, which is incredible, and then once you reach that, you need to actualize the environment around you and see this big system for what it is that you're immersed in. And it's awesome to see how it works and how intricate it is, and it's beautiful. But at the same time, try, I don't want to even tell people to try. I was not happy being a reactionary being. I thought I was making choices in my life, but my life was just a constant set of reactions to triggers in my environment. If this happened, then I would, this is, if someone yelled at me, then obviously I'm going to yell back because that's what I'm supposed to do. If this person didn't like me, then I'm supposed to hurt. If this person at this job interview didn't hire me, then I'm supposed to feel like a failure. It was all this supposed to. And I thought I was going through life, but I was literally just told this is how you're supposed to feel, how you're supposed to act when this happens. And if you look at a website, if someone builds a website, how do you program a website? Through if then algorithms. If I right click on this, then I want to be redirected to this page. If I scroll here, then I want this to pop up. And that's how you program something. And that's how a person's subconscious is programmed as well. If Ozzy is smiling, then I know I'm doing a good job. If Ozzy is mad, then I know I'm doing a bad job. And if I'm sorry, I don't even know how that's, there we go. Yeah. And at the end of the day, that if then will control your life. That if then will dictate how you experience this. We're not going to be conscious about everything we do. Our subconscious is going to control the overwhelming majority of the stuff we do because our mind doesn't have the bandwidth to think about every breath and think about every single thing we know. So our subconscious is very, very valuable to us. At the same time, if we're going to let that subconscious run most of our life on autopilot, then it's very important for us to bring awareness to these things that are deeply rooted in us. So they're brought back into our conscious mind, analyze it, and say, hey, do I like how this thing is wired? Yes. Okay, I'll keep it that way. Do I like how this thing is wired? I do. And I would like it if it was even more hardwired like that. Okay, let me keep working on that. This thing, I don't like how I react to this thing. So I want to change that. So now I'm going to create an environment where I'm triggering myself and I know how I would typically react to this thing, but I'm consciously going to respond in the way that I want. And I'm going to keep repeating it in that way until it's hardwired as a reaction. Like if I was to go boxing and I don't know how to box and I just throw a sloppy punch, and then the person tells me, no, you need to pivot on the ball of your foot. You need to bring power from your hip. You need to do this, that, the other. I'm going to consciously have to think about it because it's so new to me. But after I repeat those actions over and over and over, at some point, it'll be ingrained in my subconscious and I no longer need to think and I'm throwing that punch the way that I wanted to. And that it works like that with everything. It works like that with how your mind reacts to uncomfortable conversation, and how your mind reacts to it is going to affect how your physiology feels. If I'm going to sit there and freak out, then my heart rate's going to increase. I'm going to have tension in my body, adrenaline's going to get released. There's all these chemicals moving around in my blood now that weren't there a second ago. It we absolutely have the power to dictate our mind, our body, our soul, and yeah, I would love to see a world with more people who have really worked on that in their lives.
Yes, sorry, I muted myself. I want to see if Rita has a question or if you would like to ask something or touch on something.
I mean, my first question is just you referenced you've written a book or books. And what are those books? What is that book or books?
It's called The Art of Interpretation, a guide to remembering rules of reality. And my goal when I was writing that book was to break down how reality works moment to moment. And I saw so many different books that were spiritual books, beautiful books. I love Don Miguel Ruiz. I love Paulo Coelho. I love all these Eckhart Tolle. And I wanted to write a book that was from the ego for the ego. For somebody who's really in that 9 to 5, who's very analytical and says, if you can't explain this to me in a way that's irrefutable, that is such a cute little kitty, by the way.
So many cats in the house.
Yeah. I wanted to write it in a way where somebody who is very analytical can read this and say, oh, damn, the power of my belief logically does change my expression. And the way I express myself logically does affect the people that I'm surrounded with. And I wanted to create a bridge for someone who's completely against any of that, what they call woo woo stuff, to logically be led to that next step. And then all these awesome teachers that are out there who have written these books can hopefully be resources for them as well.
So maybe what you can do, Nima, is send me the way people can get to your book,
Yeah.
right? Your page, and then I can forward it on. We can add it on to, even when I upload these videos onto our YouTube channel, I can put all that information on there for people, and I can send it over to Rita. I can email it over to Rita. Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. What? Did you have another question, Rita?
I did have another question, which is you had the first experience in Poland that was clearly very important. It sort of made me think of just the analogy of someone going to rehab and feeling very helped and changed, but then having to face the world outside of that bubble afterwards, and how scary that can be. So can you just talk about a little bit how it was leaving that place and what that transition was like for you?
Absolutely. So there's a book that I read that was really beautiful to me. It's called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And that book is about a guy on a motorcycle trip, and through his breaking down philosophies and fabric of reality, he reaches enlightenment. And then he wrote a follow-up book called Lila. And on the introduction of that book, he had the Zen circle that I'm sure everybody's seen. It looks like a paintbrush made a circle. And he talks about that. He says, in Zen, they have the circle because half of the experience is going up and reaching enlightenment, and the other half is bringing that back into the real world and living that experience. And that was what his second book was about. Think of it like a tug of war. And again, this is the importance of your environment. Until you've built that mental resilience to really just say, hey, if I'm surrounded by a million people telling me this thing, but I know that this isn't true to me, then you don't accept it. Until then, it's a tug of war. You have all this programming that not only have you and I been fed and everybody's been fed, but it's coming from the TV. But then everyone else who's also taken in that information from the TV or from their computer or from whatever is now at work talking about that same information with other people, reaffirming that into their realities. And then they're going to their neighbors and to their family and making this what the whole world is about, that information. And that environment the more people you have pulling you towards that programming, what I call it in the book is the program and the source. And if you have your computer, your TV, your neighbor, your mom, everyone sitting here and telling you the same thing, they're trying to pull you in to know that this is what's real, this is what's life, this is what's important. And if you don't have those other pillars in your life that are pulling you in the other direction and freeing you, then it becomes tough. It's still very doable, but I'd say finding a core group of people and finding time for yourself to disconnect from all of it, finding time to just be with you, especially coming from LA. My mind was so busy all the time. When I read The Power of Now, I just hated Eckhart Tolle because it was like he was just teasing me. He's like, "Can you switch off the voice in your head? Because I can." And I said, "No, God damn it, I can't switch off the voice in my head. And is this even real? Can I do this?" And I remember the very first time I did it, I was sitting on a hill and it got quiet for a second. I looked up at the clouds and I could see some scattered clouds and then some more formed and then these big chunks of clouds. And I just said, "Oh shit, this is like the transition of a cloud right in front of me." And I've never even noticed it. And it's right in front of my face. And time for yourself is very important. And we don't really give ourselves that. That's the interesting thing about the Wim Hof method is it's so powerful. You can do the breathing in 10 minutes a day, and most people fall off of it at the end of it. Like we're just so used to constantly being stimulated. And I also want to point out that I think it's important to have time with others as well, because it's very easy to create a belief and then keep cycling that belief without getting feedback from someone else. You know, if I came and told you I realize that I am the ruler of this universe and I control you and I control Oz and all that. And there's not someone there to say, "Hey, you kind of don't. If you can, make me levitate or something." So it's good to get feedback from people, but you don't need to set any of it in stone. And it's really valuable to find that core group of people that support you and also have that time to yourself to disconnect from all this kind of stuff. And it's tough. I have a story in my book about that in northern Thailand in the jungle. And I said, I'm going to just go 2 days without doing anything. I was so used to working, so used to just being on some kind of grind. And I said, I don't want a phone. I'm just going to lay in this hammock by this lake. It's perfect. It's beautiful. I just want to do that for 2 days. And at the end of it, like someone said, you really have to check your phone. I sent you something really important. And then when I checked that thing, all of a sudden I saw like, oh, these people that I met earlier, they're actually at this place. And before you knew it, I was pulled right back into it. And I was just there. And it was still a great time with these people. Don't get me wrong. But I couldn't take that time for myself because I had developed that habit of not allowing that time for myself.
Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, I totally 100% agree on alone time. When I don't have my alone time, I find myself getting very angry, and I don't like being angry, especially as how I see myself. I'm supposed to be this person that tries to bring positivity onto others, right? And be there to support them. And then here I am getting all nuts. And yes, we're human and we all go through different emotions. But if I don't, I've noticed that I definitely need that alone time. It's very, very important. And we were just talking about this in yesterday's, Angela was speaking yesterday on sound and vibrational healing. And we were talking about this, how so many people don't notice the little sounds we have around us that are absolutely free. And nature is really the best way to heal and the best way to discover yourself, right? So, I mean, if people have invented like wave sound machines and stuff like that, there must be something in it. But like going and sitting on the beach and listening to real wave sounds, or just having like I only drink coffee in the morning, but I love that time. And as you guys know, I'm living in a treehouse right now, which is so cool. And just having my coffee in a treehouse and just telling everyone just leave me alone for an hour and just listening to the birds and listening to the trees and the leaves and the wind and watching the sun and feeling its heat and noticing these small, they're not small things, they're actually big things, but most people overlook them, and these are all tools that we have for free and we take for granted, and we don't realize that just a little bit of time in nature alone will be so healing for you and will help you kind of observe yourself. One thing I do, you said something about it, Nima, and it's something I've done since I was a little girl. You kind of said you did something similar. I would always take myself out of myself, right? And I would observe myself. So there was this Aussie, and then there was that Aussie, and then there was the Aussie, because there's like 3 sides to every story, right? And then there was the Aussie that kind of came out and was observing the other Aussies, and I'm like, okay, so which one's right and what's going on? And do I need to smack one around a little bit? And do I need to give one advice? And that's one of my little tools that I use as well. And some people may think I'm nuts, but it has worked for me. And we find our own little ways and tools to be able to connect with our inner self and listen to what's going on in our mind and also change our mindset. But yes, you're right. Alone time is very, very important. It's in those moments where you can make better decisions. You can get calm, find that peace, find that stillness, and then you can go back to your everyday life and your work. You can go back to it, right? But that time just kind of makes sense of everything else. Instead of just waking up and going straight to it, that's when I find most people are just lost and nervous and scared and anxiety. And even through teaching, I teach all over the world, and I notice a difference in people's bodies, right? And you would never know this. A lot of yoga teachers have no idea of this, and you would only know it by traveling. Like certain issues we have in the Western world don't even exist in some other countries. Like we store trauma in our bodies as well, right? So stress in our shoulders, emotions in our hips, and you see these problem areas in our physical bodies more in the Western world, and it makes so much sense to you. So much sense to you how we are sometimes being brainwashed and believing what our friends are telling us and what people around us are telling us. We're always seeking answers externally and never looking within. And the Western world isn't really taught that. You go to places like India, in some parts of Asia, some of these countries, and they really do know how to connect with their inner self. But then you go to the Western world, and most places, they just have no idea how to go within and figure out what's going on with themselves. So it's very interesting to me just to see, just in people's body parts, how it's so different from country to country.
Yeah, and there's something you said there that I think is very important to remind people, because when people are being told to get out of their comfort zone and take a leap of faith and all this kind of stuff, I've seen it time and time again. You say, hey, just come travel. You've been in this place forever and you want to go see Peru or wherever it may be. Just go do it, or whatever it may be that is that uncomfortable leap. What you had just said, you can always go back. Like people freak out, like if they do that, the entire world collapses. Like you can always go back, and maybe you're afraid that you're gonna like it so much that you're not gonna want to go back. Because that's what happened to me. As soon as I did that, I just went, "What on earth was I doing before?" And I'm very grateful. Sorry, guys. I'm almost reaching that point where I'm gonna have to actually get off the phone here, but or sorry, get off the call here. Let me see if I can mute this. show. Yeah, but am I still with you guys? There you are. Yeah. People don't take that leap very often because they think that's the end all be all. And I guess that's a perfect way to leave it is you can always go back, but just go experience it and see what happens. There's beauty in the unknown, and there's beauty in facing the fear.
Definitely, definitely. And one last thing I'd like to add before you can run off is I didn't add the heart. The heart in the Western world, so many heart issues. And when you ask these people questions, lack of love, I'm going back to what you had started speaking about in the beginning of this, lack of love. Right, lack of love in the Western world, I see a lot. Whether it's with your family, whether it's with your friend, we're so afraid to show love to one another, and especially to ourselves. And with that, I noticed so many like heart issues. And again, I just wish that people took more charge of their lives and weren't so afraid. Again, it goes back to fear. Do you know what I mean? And like you're seeing all this love by traveling around the world. And I guess what we're saying, Nima, is we're telling everyone to just get on a plane and travel, right? And just like see
Basically.
when it comes to it.
Basically.
Yeah,
if I was just watching the TV or paying attention to all those different screens, the world would be very, very different right now.
yes.
And since April, 8 different states, 6 different countries. It's not what you're seeing on TV. I promise you. I've actually been to 2 different cities that they declared were red zones around the world, and you'd think that it's some kind of Armageddon, and it's people living their lives is what's going on. So yeah, you can believe whatever you want. You could choose to live in fear. You could choose to live in love. You can look at the statistics of what's happened to people and what your percentage of chances of living, and you can look at the statistics of what's going on to our economy, to people's mental health, all these things, and make a choice for yourself. And trust me, if you think I'm nuts for doing what I'm doing, I completely understand, because everything around you is telling you to think that I'm nuts for believing this, but I'm out here doing it. So yeah.
No, thank you so much. I don't think you're nuts, but I always like a little bit of nuts in a person. So it just makes them extra special. I like uniqueness. And thank you so much. I know you have to run off. Thank you. This has been really beautiful. I can't wait to upload it so others get to also listen to this beautiful conversation. Thank you, Rita, for joining. I think Naomi most probably had to run off because her kids were driving her insane. I know her kids very well, so screaming because she really wanted to be here. So I know she's going to want to watch the recording. Thank you, Rita, for asking such amazing questions.
Thank you, Rita. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Yes.
There's a joy. Thank you very much.
Yes.
It was awesome. Guys, I love you so much. Rita, I know we just met, but I promise you I love you so much. I really do. I swear to you. And yeah, look forward to seeing you. Who knows? Maybe Cyprus, huh?
Hurry up and get your butt here and help me build some huts. I'm trying to convince everyone else to come too. And Rita knows, she comes to the studio. She was forced like quite a few hugs. So she knows that we really do spread love, whether you want it or not. We're all up in your business, giving you hugs. Can't wait for those days again. Take care of yourself. Have fun in the Netherlands. And I will see you in Cyprus soon. And I will see you in class soon, Rita.
See you guys.
Bye, everyone. Bye.